Hello and welcome to the next in our interview with series. Today I'm joined by the fantastic Peter Mowbray. Peter is an audit manager with Menzies, and we're going to be talking through his career to date and decisions he has made along the way. Peter, thank you ever so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be involved.
Amazing. Now, we've done a few of these so far, and I always start out with the first question. So, was a career in accountancy something you've dreamed of since you were 5, or was it something that you kind of fell into along the way?
I think I'd be lying if I said I dreamed about being an accountant since I was 5 years old. I think if I went back to when I was 5, I probably wanted to be something a little bit interesting and crazy, and not particularly, not particularly accountancy based. But I think certainly as I sort of went through school, started studying, did my A-levels, it became quite a natural career choice for me. I sort of, I studied at school maths and business studies, and I think those two combined really well to sort of set me up for a career in finance.
Okay. And was it the kind of the natural step? I think you left school and went straight into practice. Was that always the choice, or did you look at alternative paths at that point?
It was definitely more of a conscious decision than anything. You get to the sort of A-level age and you start looking at universities and, what the future holds. Most of my friends were all signing up to different unis and different courses they wanted to do, and it just never felt like the right thing for me. I was always somebody who was very keen to get out and start working, start getting some exposure to sort of real business and real issues, and was very fortunate enough to find an apprenticeship with Menzies. So it kind of just flowed very nicely from those studies into an apprenticeship.
Yeah, I think it's such a invaluable path, isn't it? I always talk about, for me, I was on the treadmill of education in that I did my GCSEs. I then went to sixth form at the same school because that was what everybody did, and that was kind of the only option presented to me. I did my A-levels and I went to uni because at the school and sixth form I went to, that was what everybody did. And there was never any discussion about the different paths in terms of apprenticeships. And now obviously we've got the T-levels and things like that. So I think actually what I enjoy about accountancy is the different paths you can kind of tread to get there. And I do think it's really interesting, as you said, to take that step and kind of go straight from school into accountancy and go from there. So you started with the AAT. So was that part of the apprenticeship as to it sort of went hand in hand, was it?
Yeah, that's correct. So at the time it was the level 3 and level 4 AAT course. So it was a 3-year apprenticeship. And what it did is it set me up then to be able to move on to further studies with ACA. But it kind of, although I didn't go to university, I mean, Menzies offers different opportunities for people, whether that be an AAT apprentice or for graduates. But actually what I found was peers my age who had gone to university were joining the firm and doing ACA, and actually we were still on the same courses together. I just had the additional 3 years of experience prior to that.
Yeah. Okay. And was ACA always that next step after AAT? Did you consider, I know a few practices have opened up the ACCA route. Is that something you considered, or was it always ACA?
I think the ACA was always the natural progression. It was what most of my peers around me at Menzies had been doing, and certainly felt like it would be the best step to set me up for what I wanted to do in the future. AAT was an absolutely brilliant foundation to sort of understand the industry, understand accounting. I mean, I sort of had no prior experience to it. even at A-levels, it wasn't something I'd really looked at other than a very short module within my business course. So for me, it was sort of, having done the AAT, it kind of gave me that passion to want to then move on and qualify in the ACA. And the ACA felt like the best route for me in audit.
Yeah, and throughout that time, were you working in audit, or did you touch on other areas within Menzies at all?
No, I was very fortunate. I was able to touch in some other areas. So when I was doing the AAT, I kind of started within our accounts team. So I was looking at a lot of statutory accounts, but I also had a great opportunity to get sort of a little bit of exposure to some tax elements. So both corporate and private client, which was, again, I think really valuable and able to set me up for sort of understanding the wider business and the wider industry. As I sort of got onto my last year of AAT and moved into ACA, I was then predominantly the audit team, and have remained in audit ever since.
And that was it. It was always audit for you. Did you ever consider accounts prep or tax, or was it just once you got an audit, that was it? That was where you staying?
I think working in a company like Menzies, obviously we have such a range of service lines. Obviously we've got accounting, tax, but also so many other things as well, that I'd be lying if I said I hadn't at least sort of explored potential opportunities and what I wanted to do. I think for me, though, I quite quickly came to the conclusion that audit was the career I wished to pursue. And I enjoyed the kind of clients I was working with. I enjoyed the kind of work I was doing, and I really enjoyed the team, the actual audit team that's here at Menzies. So as much as, yes, I did, I suppose, explore other thoughts and other areas, it was a very quick decision, I think, ultimately to remain in audit for the foreseeable.
And do you think that it's, because a lot of people I talk to, they like the firms, they like the businesses they work in, there grows a tedious element, shall we say, with audit. Do you think it's the Menzies culture that has kept you in audit? Is it that you thoroughly enjoy audit, or what is it that's kept you within the roles that you've worked?
I think it's a real combination of things. I don't think I could pinpoint it to any one specific reason as to why I've stayed in audit. I mean, it's a bit cliche, but I think the biggest driver behind it is the team I work with. I think Menzies is positioned really well with its culture. Our staff retention is very strong, and I think a lot of that is because, as much as, yes, a lot of people within audit as a whole, as you say, find it quite tedious, we just have such a brilliant team and a brilliant sort of ethos here. But also, I think it's the industries we operate in. So, I have friends that have worked in other firms and other areas of audit. And the bit that I kind of always come back to as to why I've enjoyed audit specifically at Menzies is the fact that our client base is so varied and so wide, and it's really allowed me to get a quite in-depth opportunity to see such a range of different industries, business leaders, and that's kind of kept things interesting. I've been at Menzies coming up to 10 years now, and throughout that time, I've been able to get exposure and meet some very interesting people and see some very interesting companies. But as much as we've sort of got exposure to these clients, some of them are smaller, but we've also still got those larger, more complex clients, ones where you can get the exposure to the slightly more technical elements. But with that, we still very much have visibility and easy ways to communicate with partners and senior management. You're very much an individual here, not a number, which I think is been a real win for me personally in terms of my job satisfaction and why ultimately I've remained in audit.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that around sort of the industry specialism versus perhaps slight generalization. I know some firms, some businesses like to push you down that sort of industry specialization route, and there's a lot that can be said to that. But it's really interesting your point around being able to work with different businesses, different types of business, different sizes of business, actually keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting, and keeps you kind of coming back again. Yeah. And obviously with Menzies, so a top 25 firm, sort of larger, medium-sized firm, do you think that had you been in a different business, had you been in a larger or perhaps a smaller firm, you would have made different career decisions? Or do you think you'd have still followed the same path and made those similar decisions in any other business?
Honestly, it's hard to say for definite. I think my position at Menzies is I've found for me, I've sort of found the right level of size firm and culture and everything like that. And I think that's been a big driver. I believe if I'd worked at a bigger firm, I might have explored opportunities to work with slightly smaller firms. As in if I had been a big four or even a top 10, I might have looked at opportunities elsewhere. Obviously, it's hard to say for definite because having not been in that situation, I don't know how I would have felt. But I think the one thing that's been pretty clear to me from very early on with my time at Menzies is that it is the perfect size firm for me personally. And as I said before, it gives you that perfect balance between really interesting, some quite technical accounting and clients, but also still being in that individual, still being a key part of the team, and being able to have easy conversations with, the partners and any of the senior people within the firm.
Yeah, of course. And was that a conscious decision when, taking you back to leaving school at 18, was it a conscious decision to join a business that sized, or was it just you applied for a few and Menzies was the right one at the right time?
Perhaps a bit of both. Obviously when I left school, there were a few applications that I made. I think Menzies for me was always the one that seemed to feel like it was on the top of the pile for that reason of I quite liked the size firm it was, and when I did some research into them, I thought it all sounded quite interesting and like it aligned with who I am as a person and what I personally enjoy. But obviously at 18, it's quite difficult to really identify that, and I think it's something that I've definitely learned probably about myself having started at Menzies, and I feel personally very fortunate that I've been able to start and continue my career at a company like this.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when somebody joins a business at 18 and it's the right one, because I think back to when I was 18 and making decisions of do I go to uni or what. I'm not sure I was making decisions based on the best and most well thought out things. So credit to you that you made that right decision and you've ended up in the place you are.
Yeah, it's so difficult. At 18, and for me, like my whole friendship group were all going off to uni, and every weekend they were looking at this uni or that uni, and I went through a period of, obviously before having applied to Menzies or before having the job interview, that there was a little bit sort of, oh, am I making the right decision by not doing this? Is what all my friends are doing. But I can absolutely, hand on my heart now, say that I'm very happy with how it all worked out. And from my side, I'd have no regrets. I think, of course, there's a bit of luck involved there in terms of that I found the company that I enjoy working at. But I think at 18, it's so difficult to be able to make that decision, because you come out of college and it's such a culture shock moving from full-time education into an office environment, especially at 18.
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? And as a country, I feel like we do this a lot, where we're forcing life-defining decisions on people at such an early age, in terms of you're making GCSE choices, you're making your A-level choices, you're making your career choices. It's such huge decisions that we make people do when they've got so little information. But I feel like we could divulge into a whole different tribe. That's one of my pet peeves, definitely. But before we dive into, I'm going to pick your brains on studying in a little bit. Before we do, and if you are watching this and you've not yet signed up to our next SAN event, we are heading to the Portsmouth area. We're going to be going to Go Rogue on the 29th of May, as you can see on the banner along the bottom. AR darts, arcade games, drinks, and pizza. If you haven't signed up, click the link in the description below, or feel free to drop me a message over on LinkedIn, and I can give you the link there. Still a few spaces left at the time of recording. So Peter, I'm getting you to cast your mind back and kind of rack your brains here. Let's take you back to when you were studying. Let's start at the very beginning of your journey. Obviously you started with the AAT, you then transitioned onto the ACA. Do you think that foundation in AAT really set you up in a good place when it came to your ACA studies?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. It's no secret, obviously ACA is a challenging qualification, and I'm a big believer it's challenging because it's worthwhile doing. But having had the AAT and the experience there, it gave me the fantastic foundation just to understand accounting and the wider elements of it. Obviously, AAT, there's various modules that you complete, and a lot of those link quite nicely in with then progressing onto the ACA qualification. I was quite lucky that because I'd done AAT, it gave me some exemptions from some of the certificate level at ACA. But moving into the ACA exams, it was a jump up, but I definitely felt fortunate that I'd had the opportunity to do the AAT prior to it, because I think it eased the pressure somewhat.
Yeah, and was there anything whilst you were studying that you found worked really well for you that you would kind of pass on to current students?
Nothing nothing revolutionary, I would say. For me personally, I find I just have to be really organized, both in terms of timing and structure. So, I'd have certain days that I would study and certain ways in which I would do it, with practice questions, things like that. For me, I suppose some of the key bits really was just practicing. I know that sounds like a really easy answer, but it was just doing as much practice questions as possible because I feel like that was the best way for me to absorb the information. But also I think certainly from AAT moving into ACA, obviously you're working a full-time job and studying on the side, and to make that work, I think if you're not organized, you're gonna really struggle. You need to have structured ways or for me anyway, I needed to have the structured ways in which I would do the study. But I'd also within that give myself a bit of a break. I think it's very easy just to sort of live and breathe and do nothing else but work and study. But actually I found that, there were certain points in the week when I would not allow myself to look at any books, and it would just be a case of time just to switch off and relax and do something outside to try and at least give myself a bit of a break.
Yeah, I think rest and recovery is almost as important as the study at times, isn't it? Just 100%. Having a life outside of staring at books and doing exam questions is really important. And how's life post-study? Do you suddenly find that you've got loads of free time and loads of time for yourself, or has work very much filled that gap?
I do look back now and wonder how I found time to study. No, I mean, it's obviously, I spent 6 years studying because it was 3 years AAT, 3 years ACA, and having now come out the end of that, I have no regrets, but I'm also at no point looking to jump back in and start doing any more courses or any more exams. I think the end of that 6 years, I was well and truly happy to finish and draw a line under it. It's obviously just, I think things change and priorities change. Back when I was studying, my goal was to pass exams, to qualify. Now my sort of attentions have changed slightly, and they're slightly more work focused in terms of, just progressing through my career, and that side of things. So it's definitely nice now I don't have the exams, but I still feel like I've got a nice amount of challenges and things to work towards.
Nice. And now you are well on your way in your career. If you can cast your mind back, speak to 18-year-old Peter, what would be the one single piece of advice that you'd kind of pass on to yourself 8-9 years ago?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I suppose it's hard to do any one thing. I suppose, and again, it sounds a little bit cliche, but it would just be to trust and enjoy the process. I think it's very easy when you're doing the qualification and you're studying and you're working really hard to just always be forward looking and going, right, okay, how long have I got? How many exams have I got? How can I get there as quickly as possible? But actually, having now got to the end of it, you realize just how quickly that time does fly. And it makes you feel really old when I say that, but it unfortunately is the reality. So yeah, I suppose it would just be to just slow down, enjoy the process and go with it.
Love that. Really enjoy that. But that is it. Thank you so much for your time, Peter.
Thank you for having me.
Picking your brains and enjoyed the conversation. If you are watching, make sure you hit that like button down below. And of course, if you want us to interview a particular type of person, a particular profile, or someone at a particular point in their career, make sure you dive in the comments below and let us know.